staying cognizant of what members' issues are regarding policy. The other 8 chief deputy whips will be working the floor to make sure that votes are understood by all the members and that we get the votes that are necessary for all the members. In addition to that, they will be dealing with the caucuses to make sure that the caucuses are thoughts and ideas are reflected in what we do with our whip operation. And so those, the chief deputy whips, most of them, not all of them are here with me today. Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas will be serving. G.K. Butterfield from North Carolina. Debbie Wasserman Schultz from Florida. I think I saw there. Kildee from Michigan. And the serving as assistant to the whip, which is new to our organization, is Cedric Richmond from Louisiana. Cedric will be working with our regional whips to make sure that each one of our 12 regions that has 2 whips each, to make sure that we reflect their thoughts. With that, we'll answer any questions you may have.
Right now with the shutdown, Mr. Clyburn, we've got some fairly shorthand emergencies going on. Food inspection, air traffic control. Do you have some thoughts that would draw a line under that for us?
Yes, we entertained issues about that today. We Democrats keep emphasizing that we are all for border security. We've been there for a long, long time. We presented to the president the legislation that was passed by both bodies in a nonpartisan way, and were told was acceptable to the president, only to find out after he started getting criticism from a couple of the conservative spokespeople in his caucus that he rejected what we sent him when he said it was acceptable to him. Now, we're not against a smart wall. We're just against a concrete edifice that he wants to dedicate to his legacy. A smart wall to us is making sure that we use all the technology available to us, the drones, all of the road improvements, whatever we need to do in order to have an impregnable smart wall, not a concrete edifice. And so we're all for that. Any other questions?
I'm trying to get to the impact of it. Maybe Ms. Wasserman Schultz might be able to help, because Florida is such a big agriculture state. Can you tell Americans how we're supposed to cope with the lack of food inspections right now? If you could come to the microphone, please.
Sure.
Well, that's a really good question for the president and for Senate Republicans. We have a manufacturing crisis here, where the president has decided to throw a temper tantrum and insist on a 7th century solution to a 21st century problem. The whip is right. We absolutely need to make sure that we emphasize and provide resources for border security. Smart wall funding would include drones, sensors, our Customs and Border Patrol agents, ensuring that we use every development in technology, which is what Homeland Security experts tell us are the most effective tools to make sure that we can have the kind of border security we need. And the irony of all this debate is that the lies that the president and his administration staff have been telling about how many thousands of people have supposedly been arrested at the border, the reality is it's only about 6. And there are more of those types of folks, 41, that have been arrested in the northern border with Canada. But in a state like Florida, without agriculture being the #2 driver of our economy, the kind of assistance that our farmers need, given the natural disasters that we've been through. We've had 2 major hurricanes in just over a year, 3 really in the last couple of years. Matthew, Michael, and Irma hit our state, and the crop damage, the supplemental appropriations that we need to that are delayed now because we've brought government to a screeching halt. because the president has this border wall fetish. And to add insult to injury, you know, while he may have abandoned the idea of a concrete wall, now he's embraced a steel wall whose testing has actually demonstrated that it can be sawed through. I mean, there are pictures that show that what he's talking about, it would be completely ineffective and in fact actually hinder our ability to make sure that we can keep our borders secure.
Mr. Clyburn?
And I think it may be important to also emphasize that of the 800,000 workers that are affected by the shutdown, 80% of those do not live in the Washington metro area. They live all across America. The economic impact of the shutdown is approximately $1 billion a week. And so what's going to resolve this problem? The American people, public opinion is going to change the president's mind, or at least Senator McConnell's mind, and get some legislation moving. Democrats are not the problem. Republicans are obstructing. They're keeping this government shut down, and it's hurting average Americans who work so hard to support their families.
I think for most of us, we would simply ask that Senator McConnell take the position that he firmly held just a few weeks ago. And that is that we should have the government open and operating and continue to have this debate. We're willing to have a debate based on facts, but we're not willing to do that with a gun to our head by the president being so willing to shut down the government. And unfortunately, Leader McConnell being willing to hand over all the authority that the voters that voted for him and the Senate that elected him leader, handing all that authority over to the President of the United States.
First, I'd like to say that I am privileged to work with Whip Jim Clyburn, who has shown both his strength and his commitment to making sure that the democratic policies and legislation prevail on behalf of the American people. But I think we should educate this debate and say to the American people that Democrats and the Democratic majority and the Senate, if the Senate would simply put legislation on the floor of the House, have already taken a strong stance on border security. The president already has access to $1.6 billion and just came back from the border about 1 week ago, standing in the same area that young Felipe came across. Even there are barriers, as there are barriers mostly throughout where they can be put in the border states. The president is visiting an area today that has over $1 billion in trade, as evidenced by the representative of that area, Mr. Cuellar. So he's going to an area where he has to distort the facts that there is danger. There's business going on there. And what is really needed, and the president is made some comment about it in his speech, were drones, more personnel, increased salaries, more equipment, more night goggles, which we gave to the Border Patrol agents some years ago when we built them up, more CBP personnel, which is where most of the drugs come across. So the president has created a falsehood. He has distorted the facts. He is creating a distraction. And I think, as he indicated early on, he's taking ownership of it. It's his shutdown. The shutdown is the very wrong way to solve a policy question. And what Democrats are saying is our hearts bleed for those individuals who are trying to pay mortgages, get medicine, have child care. We are working with our leadership, with Mr. Clyburn, to find ways for these individuals to be able to access resources. And that's the compassion that we have. But all he has to do is to sign the bills that we have passed, and all the Senate has to do is to place those bills on the floor of the Senate. I would say to the majority leader, why are you stopping your members, your senators, from voting their conscience so that we can help the American people? We bleed for them, and we thank those who are on the front lines for their service. And I thank Mr. Clyburn for allowing me to serve with him.
Mr. Clyburn?
Yes.
Assuming the shutdown does end,